like to welcome everyone to the triad session today on 911, how it works and when to call. There's been some dispute about how 911 actually works, who ends up coming to a call, when should you call. And I don't think there's anyone better than Paul Logan, the manager of training and standards. Is that right, Paul? Is that your
Correct.
title? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, if there's anybody who knows when to call, it's Paul Logan, right? And so, Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into this business yourself, and then launch on into the presentation, please.
All right. Thanks, Mike. I'm happy to be here with everybody. It's been actually over a year since I've gotten to share anything about what we do or how we do it with anybody in the public. I've been spending a lot of time, as you can imagine, last year, early on planning, and then we went through the summer of 2020 with civil unrest, and our job became exceedingly more complicated. So super happy to be here. I'll share. I'm happy to answer any and all questions that I can once we get going, and they don't have to wait till the end. If something I say jars a question, we'll try to answer some as we go. Mike said I'm Paul Logan. I'm currently the training and standards manager. I've been with the department for 28 years. I just had my 28th anniversary, in fact, this month. Hopefully not too many more anniversaries before I'll be retiring, maybe only one more. But love the job, and I've done pretty much every job in the department. Prior to working in 911, I was a paramedic on the East Coast. So I've done everything. I've been a firefighter, I've been a paramedic, EMT, police academy graduate, Army veteran. So I have a pretty wide experience in public safety. Public safety communications, our department is a department of county government. My boss, Director Bixler, answers directly to the county executive, Joe Parisi. We provide service to dozens and dozens of police, fire, and EMS and other departments across Dane County, including the City of Madison Police and Fire Departments, the Dane County Sheriff's Office, the Dane County Medical Examiner, Dane County, Madison and Dane County Public Health, in that we provide dispatch service for the animal control folks, and various other organizations in the county and the city, and municipalities, including Verona and Wanakee, all across the county. So we do that with a staff of 87 full-time people and 4 part-time people. The bulk of that staff, 77 of those people, are assigned to the operations division. So those are the folks that are actually answering the calls, sending the help, or their supervisors or managers in that division of operations. The other folks, including myself, support those operations. In my role as training and standards manager, I provide training and oversee training for not only new employees coming into our department, but also cross-training for employees and ongoing training. We, as you can imagine, the way technology works and just the ever-changing landscape of technology and telephones and everything requires constant and ongoing training. We're very proud of the training that we do. We also, as my title says, standards. So we have a very robust quality assurance program. We review, we listen to hundreds of calls every month to ensure consistency, that no matter what time of day or night you call, no matter who answers the phone, you should get the same level of consistency across the board. Now, of course, sometimes we have new people and they may not be quite as skilled in everything, but we work very hard to make sure that calls are handled consistently across the board. Our policies are applied consistently. We treat callers with respect, regardless of where the call is coming from. And we do that by doing this robust quality assurance program, by listening to these calls, by providing feedback to our employees. If during the call we hear something that, is egregious, we take quick actions that typically revolve around training and maybe remedial training, but in some cases, unfortunately, do result in discipline. We also respond to complaints or feedback from the public if somebody provides some negative feedback on an interaction they had with the department. I'm happy to say that in all my years, we have way, way more compliments from the public than we do complaints. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. Some people have a bad day. And when you're answering call after call, sometimes they get to you. And I would be lying if I said that sometimes an employee here might pick up a phone and have a less than perfect attitude. But we work very hard to not let that happen. So our department was created in the late 80s. Before I started with the department in 93. But prior to 1989, the city of Madison ran its own dispatch centers for police and fire, and the Dane County Sheriff's Office ran a dispatch center that handled most of the suburban municipal departments. And in 89, those departments merged to create efficiencies. That's when 911 was actually first turned on in Dane County. Prior to that, you had to dial a 7-digit number. So we've been around for a long time, more than 30 years now. And we've grown a lot. When I first started in 1993, there were less than 50 employees, actually less than 50, maybe less than 40 employees. So we've added a lot of staff to keep up with the growing population of Dane County, still the fastest growing county in Dane County in the state. Our volume, call volume continues to increase. In 2020, we answered 166,000 plus 911 calls. So roughly 14,000 calls per month ring in, break that down. So that's hundreds of calls every day, calls every hour, and we stay busy. We're staffed based on, we change our staffing numbers based on time of day and day of week. Our busiest times are typically between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. As you can imagine, 2020, of course, and so far in 21, the stats are completely skewed. But prior to that, those hours between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m., kids getting off of school, people leaving work, increased traffic, increased shopping. So that increases our call volume with crashes and just more people out and moving around. So our average time, talk time on a 911 call is almost 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 58 seconds on average. We're on the phone with somebody. That seems like that's pretty fast, 3 minutes for a 911 call. There's, of course, always the outliers. Might be a call, we'll be on a 911 call with somebody for 6 or 7 or even 20 minutes. If you can imagine somebody rural out in, rural town of Vermont, and we're talking a loved one through performing CPR or some other life-saving measure until ambulance can arrive, we could be on the phone. Add some inclement weather to that. But typically we're on the phone about 3 minutes for an emergency 911 call, which is very efficient. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. We answered in 2020 also about 207,000 non-911 calls. So not only calls where people dial 911, but there's numerous published 7-digit numbers for police and fire and EMS. 255-2345 is our primary number. That is actually answered by an automated system that asks if you're having an emergency to press a number or say something. It's a very intuitive system. If somebody yells help, it will transfer the call to a live agent. That system works very well. It helps take a lot of call volume off of us, but it also directs people to other things. where they might not need one of our emergency dispatchers to answer the phone. So we continue to try to tweak that system. But that's roughly 17,000 calls per month, and we spend an average of about 2 minutes per call on those calls. So it takes up a lot of time, takes up a lot of people. We generally have plenty of staff, but a lot of people will ask, is it possible to get a busy signal when you call 911? It is indeed. There are only, depending on where you are and where you're dialing from, the system, the cell tower or the phone lines only will let so many calls through. And the reason for that is if there's a fire, say on the west side of Dane County, like a barn fire, and you got a whole bunch of people trying to call in, all the phone lines could be taken up. Well, somebody in Deerfield on the other side of the county might have an emergency and can't get through. So there's some built-in throttling with how the phone works. And you could, in fact, either have a long ring time. Your phone call could potentially ring for minutes if all our call takers are busy. We can't staff for that big fire. We staff for what we know our historical numbers are. But a crash on the Beltline or some incident on the UW campus or some other emergency, a thunderstorm rolling through Dane County can overwhelm us and could make you wait. One of the things I would say is that if you dial 911, don't hang up. Part of the challenge is if you dial 911, the phone system is very smart and there's built-in fail-safes. So if your phone dials 911, once it reaches our system, even if it hasn't been answered yet, it's going to continue to ring, even if you hang up. So our system captures that phone and it's going to continue to ring and it's going to present it to a call taker, a person that answers the phone. If you have hung up and called back because you think it's taken too long, now you potentially have 2 call takers tied up. You have one person that answers the phone and there's no one there. So our policy is that if we answer the phone and there's no one there, we have to call the number back because maybe there was an emergency, maybe you were under attack and you couldn't stay on the line or some other reason. So if you call 911 and you hang up before it's answered, we're going to call back. Well, if you've already called back, you're talking to somebody else. Now we're getting a voicemail, just so now you're using up 2 people's time. And that's not a good use of yours or our resources. So if you dial 911, stay on the line. If it seems like it's taken a long time to answer, the first thing is that our perception when we're waiting, of course, in an emergency is, oh my God, it took 2 or 3 minutes. And I can tell from reviewing a lot of incidents over the years that when someone says my phone rang for 3 minutes, and when I look at the actual numbers, it probably rang for about 35 seconds. Our perception, right, of time is skewed when we're in crisis. And, we can't help that. We have a lot of complaints. It took 7 minutes for the ambulance to get there. No, it really took about 3 minutes. We can track that. But I will say if you dial 911 and it seems like it's taken forever to get answered, just stay on the line. Don't hang up. You'll hear a recording at some point that says 911 has received your call, but everybody's busy. So stay on the line and don't hang up if it's safe to do so. We have that and we put that on back about 8 or 9 years ago. One of the things I want to talk about as far as when you call 911, the vast majority of folks call 911 for medical emergencies. So in 2000, we started a system called Medical Priority Dispatch. And prior to 2000, if you called 911 for a medical problem, there was no real specific training or system to gather very specific, very detailed medical information to send an ambulance. So I'm going to I'll just use an example. I'm going to go back to the town of Vermont in this example. So if a resident out in the town of Vermont, south of Mount Horeb, down by Tyrol Ski Basin, the farthest southwestern part of Dane County, and dialed 911, say 10 o'clock at night for having chest pain. So call would ring into us. We would gather information. We would alert Mount Horeb Fire Department. Covers the town of Vermont. Mount Horeb Fire Department. Volunteers were at home, sleeping in their beds. We would send out an alert to them. They would, run to the fire station, get in an ambulance. By the time they reached a patient in the town of Vermont, from the time they first called us, it could be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 minutes. It's a long ways away. Ambulance gets there, determines that this patient is having a heart attack. The protocol at the time was for Mount Horeb or a lot of the rural EMS units who were basic EMTs to then request assistance from a paramedic ambulance. At the time, the only paramedic ambulance was the city of Madison. So what would happen is the EMTs in Mount Horeb would load up that patient in their ambulance. They would start driving towards the city of Madison, towards their destination hospital. And then we would send an ambulance from the city of Madison with paramedics who are trained and equipped with all kinds of drugs and medicine and can do a lot more than a basic EMT. And they would meet somewhere like along 18151 or along Highway S, and the paramedics would get in the back of the Mount Horeb ambulance with all their tools and equipment, and they would treat that patient, and that patient might make it to a hospital in 30 or 40 minutes sometimes. So in 2000, we started this system of asking very specific questions to callers. And these questions weren't just decided by somebody. They were put together with doctors and paramedics and dispatchers from around the world. It's not just an American thing, around the world. And it has absolutely changed the way that we do business, fundamentally, not just in 911, but also in the fire departments and the ambulances around Dane County. How did it change? So you called 911 today, and we ask you a very specific set of questions. Every caller gets asked the same question. Every caller starts with 911, what's the address of the emergency? Obviously, without an address, without a location, we can't send any help. Okay, so we need for callers to know where they are. If it's an address, give us an address. Directionals are important. If it's east, west, north, south, as you can imagine in Dane County, there's a North Main Street in every jurisdiction. There's a Madison Avenue. There's all kinds of these streets that are repeated throughout the county. So we need to know, what community you're in. If you're in Wanakee, or you're in the town of Westport, or you're in the town of Madison versus the city of Madison or the village of Maple Bluff, we need to know that so we can get help sent to the right place. We ask everybody for their phone number is the second question we ask. Why? In case we get cut off. Cell phones aren't perfect. You can lose signal. We want to be able to call you back. And then we always ask, tell me exactly what happened. And Cara, I see you're on the call. I bet you're nodding your head because you remember this very well. Tell me exactly what happened. And once you answer that, tell me exactly what happened, that directs the call taker to go to one of 49 different chief complaints, whether it's chest pain or trouble breathing, or I'm having a baby or bleeding, or any number of chief complaints, directs them to very specific questions that help determine the acuity level, the severity level of this incident. If somebody's having a heart attack or chest pain or trouble breathing, we normally can determine that within about the first 27 seconds, and we can have an ambulance dispatched in under 30 seconds in many, many cases in Dane County. So let's go back to the Mount Horeb example, the town of Vermont example. Today, that same person in the town of Vermont at 2 o'clock in the morning dials 911. And within 30 seconds, we've determined that they're having severe chest pain and trouble breathing. Now, instead of the dispatcher sending Mount Horeb alone and then waiting for Mount Horeb to get there and assess the situation and then ask for additional help, now we send Mount Horeb and we send paramedics automatically from the city of Verona, which is again, half again closer than the city of Madison. And those paramedics from Verona and the EMTs from Mount Horeb can arrive at that patient's side, sometimes simultaneously. Sometimes the paramedics can beat, again, depending on where in the county we're talking about. And those paramedics can then start delivering very high quality care with drugs and other interventions that, in many cases are the same thing that the physician in the emergency room is going to do. And it is it's a life changer. It's a lifesaver. Every year in Dane County, we're saving, I think our, average is probably, 18 to 25 times a year where somebody was actually dead, pulseless, non-breathing. And because of the work of our dispatchers, our communicators, local EMS, police, fire departments, that person makes it to the hospital and walks out of a hospital. So that's something we're very proud of, but this system allows us to do that. So, you may dial 911 and you may be on the phone and you're like, stop asking me so many darn questions and just send the help. It's super important to keep in mind that the way we're set up in a two-stage operation is that the person that you're talking to on the phone is not the same one that's sending the help. Okay, that's the way it is in a lot of communities around Dane County, a lot of smaller counties that have one or two people working. I've got anywhere from 16 to 20 people on duty at a time. So the person that's answering the phone is taking your information, they're adding it to a computer system, and the person that's sending help is on the other side of the room, and they're getting that information in front of them. And when I say that we can have that ambulance going in 30 seconds, the person is still on the phone with you. They're taking your information and they're continuing to add it to the computer and they're updating. And every ambulance in Dane County has a computer in it, and they're getting that information over the radio or via the computer, and there's a map and it's guiding them to the location, and the system is just way more efficient. But when you're on the phone and it seems like it's taken, now we hopefully we're telling you that help is on the way, but sometimes you may not hear that. But just know that when you dial 911, there's not a delay. It's not the person that's talking to you on the phone is not the same person that you're waiting to send help. Hang up the phone and send the help. Help has already been sent, whether it's police department, whether it's the fire department, whether it's an ambulance. Help is coming, even if we're on the phone with you. And we're going to continue to ask questions, and we may ask about what kind of medicine you're taking, or your person, your loved one, if you're calling about somebody else. We're going to give you instructions on how to stop bleeding, on how to do CPR, on how to deliver babies. Every year we help, deliver, dozens of babies in and around Dane County, sometimes in the backs of cars, sometimes in people's houses. And we've done it on the side of the road. We've done it in parking lots of hospitals because they just couldn't make it inside. So this system, though, has been a game changer for the citizens of Dane County, and it continues to evolve and get better. It's under the direction of a medical doctor. We also have our own local medical director that works with us very closely, Dr. Casey Cronenfeld, who's an emergency physician at St. Mary's Hospital. She's an employee of ours through contract, part-time, and she makes sure that our folks through this quality assurance process are following these medical protocols appropriately to make sure we're not giving anybody bad medical advice. So, and lots of ongoing training with that throughout the year to make sure folks are staying up to date. CPR recertification, even though we're not there doing hands-on CPR on anybody, we still have everybody certified so we understand the techniques. So.
Oh, I was wondering about that. So you have people there who know how to give instructions to deliver a baby.
Absolutely. And it's step by step. We read it. We want our folks to, and it's not, actually, I've got it's a set of cards that looks very much like this. And here's the, tell me exactly, what's your address, what's your phone number? And then depending on the answer to the questions, they go to another card. And then down here, there's instructions, step-by-step instructions for bleeding control, delivering babies, CPR, Heimlich maneuver. Of course, it's all computerized, but if for some reason, technology never breaks, right? We have this backup and we can use cards, but everything's computerized. Nobody's flipping through cards and taking the time to do that. The system is all integrated with our other systems, and we train on it. We use it dozens and dozens of times every day. As I said, 166,000 times a year, perhaps. Actually, we do about 40,000 EMS calls every year in Dane County. So 40,000 times a year, roughly. We're answering an 911 call that's resulting in the use of that card system, asking questions, gathering important information, and sending out an ambulance somewhere in Dane County. So that's a lot.
I would like to jump in here.
Yeah.
First of all, thanks, Paul, for doing this and for what you do and what your co-workers do. It's fabulous. I had a situation where I needed to give CPR about several years ago to someone on the street, and I'd been trained in it and had a bunch of refresher courses, but all of a sudden, wow, it's happening. Called 911. The person on the line guided me through everything. Meanwhile, I got help from someone else who knew CPR on the street. The ambulance crew arrived very quickly, luckily, and the fellow was fine. But it was really thanks in large part to people at the 911 center who very calmly, very authoritatively guided me and gave me confidence in what I was doing until the real help, arrived. So I can vouch for what you guys do there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. That's great to hear. It's those are always tough calls, but it's good. I'll tell you a funny story. Probably wasn't long after we started using the system. One of our folks took a call from a medical clinic, like Dane Care or Physicians Plus, like I think it was maybe Wanakee, and it was a regular clinic. And there was a nurse and a doctor there, and the woman started giving birth. And they called 911 for an ambulance, but we stayed on the line because the doctor hadn't delivered a baby since medical school or since residency, and the nurse had never delivered a baby. And we literally stayed on the line and talked them through what to do. So even, doctors and nurses sometimes need just a reminder of things. And that's really what it turned out to be. Don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do that. So that was an interesting call. What else? Probably the most important thing, and I mentioned this earlier, the most important thing when you dial 911 is, of course, location. And that's always the first question we're going to ask. And although cell phones, can be lifesavers, the technology, the location technology in let me rephrase that. The technology location in cell phones is amazing. The challenge is that the, Uber, the Pizza Pit, whoever knows exactly where you are, right? They know they can come and find you no matter where you are. The challenge is that the technology to get the information from this device to us at 911 still comes to me on 1962 copper wire. We don't have all the fancy Uber stuff yet. The state of Wisconsin is currently working through contract negotiations with AT&T to build a new telephone network for 911 across the state. That's going to take out the 1962 copper wire and will much better be able to deliver us better location information right to 911. So we'll be able to much more easily find you. But today, it's incumbent upon callers to really know where they are. And I say that knowing that our folks, our professional trained folks, we spend a lot of time doing geography and training and maps, and we have great mapping systems. But we're going to work together with you to get an address or an intersection. There have been times, quite honestly, where a caller didn't know the address or couldn't tell us an address, but knew that 200 yards away there was an intersection. If you can see 2 blue street signs, tell us the street sign names and we'll send help there, and somebody can flag them down. But we're going to ask location. We do have some tools that we can use. We could actually send you a text message and have you click on a link that would then help you tell us where you are. That's some new technology we're just rolling out. But it's very important, location, knowing where you are. And in 2016, we started that we were the first county in the state, I believe, to start receiving text messages to 911. So you can open up your phone and type in 911 in a text, and you could send us a text message. We don't encourage that. We say text if you call, if you can, text if you can't. When might you not be able to? In a situation where maybe somebody's in your house and you're hiding in a closet under a bed and you don't want to speak, or a domestic violence situation, and somebody is hiding, or maybe in a workplace violence situation, or deaf and hard of hearing are using text messages more and more instead of using TTY. So text works, but as you can imagine, when you're texting with somebody, just as you do in your day-to-day life, you can't hear if somebody's excited. So it puts us at a very major disadvantage. We can't hear the fear in somebody's voice. We can't hear the anger in somebody's text words. We just get words on a screen. And so it's hard to really get a feel for what's happening. Dispatchers tend to have a sixth sense when something's going on, when they're listening on the phone, and it's something we develop over the years. But there have been many times when I've talked to somebody, and just based on the words, how they said things, or maybe I heard something in the background, a door being slammed or somebody yelling or a gunshot, which I've heard on numerous occasions, which obviously doesn't translate well with words on a screen. So we do accept text messages. We will, in the not too distant future, once this network, this statewide network, probably be able to accept videos. Hey, this car just crashed into me, or look at this car crash, which is a plot, there's a good and a bad to that. It's good if we can share information with the responders to help them prepare better for what they're going to see when they arrive on the scene, especially if it's 2 cars and they're really mangled. We maybe need to send more equipment, more help. But selfishly, from my perspective, for the last 30 years, our staff has only had to be ear witnesses to really horrible things, and really some horrible things. But now we're at a point where we're going to be seeing images and videos of those horrible things. So we are concerned with the well-being of our staff, vicarious trauma. We have a very good system in place already, a peer support team to help our folks, a mentoring system. We have an outstanding employee assistance program that the county provides through a third-party vendor. We have a chaplain who's available to our staff. And we spend a lot of time and resources on making sure that our folks stay well and stay healthy, especially after handling a traumatic incident. So some interesting things, obviously the last year has been challenging for many businesses, for everybody in the world. It has changed the way we do business in a couple of ways. Prior to 2020, thinking that we could have a 911 call taker sitting in their home answering 911 calls was like a pipe dream for us. Today, I have 911 call takers sitting at their dining room tables answering 911 calls. Just like we're doing Zoom, they are actually answering 911 calls. The calls are coming in, they're being routed to their kitchen table. They've got a laptop and a couple of monitors, and we're actually able to have them working at home. So it's really been a game changer. The county has been fabulous in providing us the resources to bolster our technology. Where I'm going with this is even post-pandemic, when a big thunderstorm or something rolls through Dane County, we get overwhelmed. By the time we can put out a word and say, hey, 911 folks, come and help us out, by the time they can, make sure their family is safe, get in their vehicle, drive to downtown Madison and get to work, the bulk of the crisis is over. So now going forward, we envision that some number of people every month could be assigned a work from home unit. And if a major incident happens, they could be logged in and helping us out in minutes instead of in hours. So very cool technology, continues to evolve. The other thing that 2020, of course, did for us, I'll get to your question in just a second there, Chris. The other technology, of course, 2020, brought about civil unrest. In June of 2020, we actually had a firebomb thrown into the city county building in the space immediately adjacent to our department, and forced us to evacuate the 911 center. So we're blessed in Dane County. We're probably the only department in the entire state of Wisconsin. In fact, I can say we are for sure, that has a dedicated, and I'm just going to pick up my screen. I'm going to turn it around. I don't know if you can see that, but there is 14 empty workstations at this undisclosed location. I could tell you where it is, but then I have to kill you. And we are blessed to be able to have a facility like this that's ready at a moment's notice. So, of course, because of the pandemic, we'd already had some folks working out here. We had our folks split about 50-50 between downtown and our remote facility. But when that bombing happened in the city county building, we were forced to evacuate. We were able to move everybody out here swiftly, and we didn't miss a beat. We didn't lose a phone call. We didn't lose a transmission. Our staff have worked so hard. We have trained, and it goes back before 2020. Some of you remember June 19th of 2019, MG&E had an explosion at a power plant downtown. It took out power for the whole isthmus. We had some challenges that day. We were forced to evacuate. So we've learned a lot. The county, Dane County, has invested a lot of resources to make sure that we have this resilience that is second to none in the state of Wisconsin. And quite frankly, not too many departments, especially departments of our size in the entire country, enjoy the kind of robust redundancy that we have. So I hope that makes you feel safer and more secure in knowing that even when all heck is breaking loose, that 911 calls, short of some catastrophic system phone, something that's beyond our control, AT&T blows up or something like that, and that happens periodically. We have So we have major outages with different carriers. A couple of weeks ago, it was TDS. A whole bunch of phone lines on the west side of Dane County simply didn't work because, you know, somebody with a backhoe dug through a fiber optic cable. Not much difference than what happened in Sun Prairie 3 years ago, where they dug through a gas line and, you know, blew up Sun Prairie. So those types of man-made emergencies can and do happen. Some things are beyond our control, but what is within our control is things that are within, you know, the Dane County infrastructure, our buildings and whatnot. So there was a question here. When calling into 911, how can we best decide which incidents to report to protect ourselves and our communities from crime, yet also avoid the possibility of unfairly targeting who may be innocent, but maybe various reasons appear out of place? Well, that's an interesting question, Chris, because obviously that is that's an important topic that a lot of communities and folks in my business are dealing with. It's some people call it profiling. It's been called, you know, walking while black or driving while black or brown or whatever else. You know, one of the things that, you know, we don't want to discourage anybody from calling. You know, if your gut instinct is that, you know, something's out of place, call, but don't be surprised if our call taker says, well, tell me what's suspicious about it. You know, just because somebody is, you know, in your neighborhood, they might have a super legitimate reason to be there. They, you know, they might be a neighbor you haven't met yet. You know, their car may have broke down. There may be lots of reasons. But don't be surprised if we ask you. Again, I don't want to discourage anybody from calling us. Our sort of tagline that we started in 2009 was, if you think you need the police or the fire department or an ambulance to come to where you are or go somewhere to help somebody, dial 911. You know, but I don't have a great answer other than, if you don't be surprised if you call, if we ask you a few more questions, like, why do you think, you know, what's suspicious about it? Now that doesn't mean that we're going to take that call and just say, sorry, we're not sending anybody. We're always going to give that call to somebody else, because calls don't stop with us. If we get a call that's reporting what you describe as a suspicious person, that call is going to be given to a police officer. It may be given to a police officer with a qualifier. We spoke to this person, couldn't really give us a reasonable explanation what was suspicious about this person, but we're passing it on to you, officer. And that officer may decide to drive to the area, or they may decide to not do anything with it. That's between that police officer and his or her agency. And each agency obviously is going to handle things differently. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was the follow-up question. Does the person getting this additional information after asking questions of the 911 caller pass that information on to the dispatcher and then to the actual person or organization that's providing service? Police?
Yes, absolutely. As long as we're on the phone and answering and asking you questions and gathering information, all of that's going into our computer-aided dispatch, or CAD, and that information that's in the CAD goes to every agency, goes to police, goes to fire, goes, you know, if they're assigned to that incident. Every police car has a computer in there, you know, has a computer in it. It goes into their records, their local records system as well. So whatever information you give us on the phone, we're going to add that to the computer, and somebody's going to see it at some point.
I'm happy to hear that line of questioning is being followed. That's very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot more. I know there's a lot more to come on that. I know that the Criminal Justice Council and other entities that we're involved in with working with our department, the mental health crises. It's a continuing, developing thing.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Other questions?
A couple, let's see. Back in October, we had one of the MPD mental health officers speak at our conference, and he talked about the CAD system and how they try to, they're working to develop profiles. I mean, we use the word profile, but profile is basically a set of very brief information, right?
Yeah.
And so they're working to try and identify places where there could be mental health issues. And they're working with either private, relatives, whatever. I don't know where they gather all of the information, but do you find that kind of information helpful? And if you do, how can that, I mean, if people know that, hey, there's a mental health issue highly likely at this location, you're prepared for it, right? You don't lack the information. So how can you build that out?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Good information. So we do, and it's not just mental health information. We annually receive through organizations such as, help me out here, Community Living Alliance, and a few other organizations that just slipped my mind. They send us information on clients of theirs that might have mobility problems, that might need special assistance in the case of an emergency. Of course, we also know that there are certain addresses in Dane County where there's a high probability that, if there's an emergency, let's say, God forbid, a fire, that a lot of people in that building or that address are going to need help getting out. But we do get information through some of these groups, these community groups, that we do put into our community dispatch. We get profiles, if you will, from Madison Police Department's mental health team, that they develop these profiles with family members and clinicians that sometimes help us. If we have a person who calls us, numerous times a day, or demanding certain services, helps us and the responders figure out how best to address those situations. We also get information from law enforcement about other situations where somebody is maybe a bad guy, hates cops, has vicious animals, is known to carry weapons, so that if a call pops up at that location, we get, safety alerts from fire departments about unsafe situations in different locations, different buildings. Hey, if this building catches on fire, don't go on the roof because it could be prone to collapse. So there's a lot of that goes on. We work very closely with all of our agencies, police, fire, and ambulance. We attend their meetings. They call us. We're in super close contact, and the CAD really is a toolbox, and sort of everything goes through there. Hope that helps.
I have a question, Paul. When we're not in the throes of a pandemic, do you give tours?
We do. We love. I was telling Mike just before we started that, yeah, I'm anxious to get back to giving people tours. The other thing that we sometimes do is we'll allow people to come up and spend a few hours with a headset on and plugged in next to one of our call takers to get a real feel for what happens in your city and in your county.
That would be terrific.
It can be an eye opener. I don't know where, I don't know if that's going to be this year. It certainly is not going to be before July. We'll have to, have a sort of a wait and see.
Sure.
Do you hire people with a certain background to be the 911 caller takers?
That's a great question. We don't necessarily hire for background. We have a wide variety of folks with a wide variety of histories. We've got school teachers, math experts. We've got all kinds of folks who have come to work for us. but quite honestly, I did a lot. I did recruiting and hiring for many, many years. And what I look for, I actually carry a special card in my wallet. And if I'm somewhere at a restaurant or some business and I had exceptional customer service, I'll hand that person a card and say, hey, next time we're hiring, it's a tough job, you know, and it's a job that most people can't do. But the ability to remain calm under stress, it's really about communications. And that's why the job title that we give to the people that work in the comm center is not dispatcher, it's not anything, it's communicator. And because really you have to communicate and you have to be able to talk to people. And so I've always said that a waiter or a waitress who can handle a busy fish fry on a Friday night, you know, at a tavern and not get flustered. Story going back 30 years before I started here, actually, we had a young man that worked in the comm center that had worked at Smokey's Club and was able to do a 12 top from drinks to dessert and never wrote anything down.
Oh my gosh.
And he worked for us here at 911 and went on to be a very successful air traffic controller. And that's, I mean, that person obviously is like a unicorn, but someone with the good analytic skills, listening is the number one thing you have to be able to do. You have to be able to do multiple things at one time, type and listen and talk and check other resources. But we also have a very robust training program, selection program, numerous tests, psychological evaluation, hands-on tests with computers. But then also the space that I'm in is also our training space, and new hires come in and spend about 8 weeks training before we ever let them answer a phone by themselves. Actually way more than 8 weeks, but 8 weeks before they're solo, answering calls solo. So,
Thank you.
of course.
Can I ask you something that isn't with the 911, but it's like, do paramedics get trained how to get into buildings when people are incapacitated and can't open the door? Like if your doors are locked and you're alone in the house, and
Sure.
do they get trained how to enter, like come through a window? Because I know they do.
Yeah, sometimes they do what's called forced entry, but a lot of places, that's another thing that we sometimes have in our computer dispatch is we have codes for people's houses or for apartment buildings. Also through the fire department, businesses and residents, apartment buildings can have what's called a Knox box. And that's like a vault that is built into your building. The fire department has a key, and within the Knox box is keys for the building. And most commercial buildings in Madison, anyway, I think are required by ordinance to have a Knox box. But sometimes they have to force entry. They might call the fire department to come and back them up. They might try, you know, so yes, they do get trained.
Okay, great, thanks.
Good. Other questions?
Mr. Logan?
Yes.
My name is Amy Scar and I'm a victim advocate. And this has been really helpful because part of safety planning for people is telling them how systems work. And so I get a lot of feedback about, you know, being on the phone a long time, asking all these silly questions,
Yep.
but they're not, right? The first
No.
3 questions are not silly, and they are the safety plan for whatever's happening at the end of that line. So this has just been really, really helpful. Thanks so
Good.
much.
Yeah, I'm
Wondering
glad.
if you'd like to do anything for my community meetings to talk about 911, because I do several community meetings for victims of crime.
Yeah, always happy to. I've worked with you know, folks at the DA's office, Marlis Howe, of course, for many, many years. She helps train our dispatchers. So yes, absolutely, you can reach out to me. You can go to dane901.com, or you can just email me, Logan, Logan at countyofdane.com, and happy to work something out with you. Other questions about 911, what we do? I'm trying to think if I've missed anything.
Looks like Jane has one.
Oh, hi. Well, I've just found this really interesting. Jane Mullins, I work for the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources, and I'm on the Triad board, but we contract with all of the counties for funds they get for doing like elder abuse investigations and such, consumer protection. But on a personal note, my daughter's been a dispatcher for Manitowoc County for 15 plus years. And you're describing her when you talk about somebody who's just very detail oriented, listener, patient, quiet. She's honestly, if you met her, you think she was a very shy person. And I think when I see her, it's because she's been on the phone so much, she's just ready to not talk.
Yeah.
But I know nothing about what she really does because except for an article in the paper a few years ago where it was recognizing her for having walked a teenager through giving his mother CPR and saving his mother's life. And the mother had wanted to meet the dispatcher. My daughter was like, oh my gosh, we never do this. I'm a little embarrassed about this. I was like, you helped him save his mother's life. And many people do not, of course, as you know, do not survive CPR. Oftentimes, the damage and such from heart and such has been done when they're having a heart attack. If they need CPR, they're in pretty bad shape. But I really appreciated all the details and such. And I remember you weren't the one that did the training, but I've had training through the system as a poll worker for what to do in the event of a shooting or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah. We'll give your daughter a high five for me.
Yeah, she's awesome. Love her dearly. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
Question for Mike from me. This is Chris. Mike, will this program be on the RSVP YouTube?
Yes, Chris, thanks for asking it. I am recording it and we'll have it on the Triads of Dane County YouTube site. It'll be a couple days till I get it up there, but just search for Triads of Dane County YouTube and you'll find this and lots of other terrific programs from the last 6 months, at least 9 months almost. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, Paul, I can't really think of, I'm overwhelmed here by all of this information. I'm so happy that you're able to do this for us. Just unbelievable. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
really appreciate
thanks so much,
really
Paul, for everything you do.
Thank you so much.
Anytime,
Thank you.
feel free to anybody that's on the call, if you have questions or you're representing another group, I actually miss this. I've been 28 years. It's still a job that I love. We have an incredible team of people that put their heart and soul into this business and have, for the last year. Nobody was staying home from 911 unless they were working at home. But we were up here front line and, nobody was none of our people were recognized for being, the heroes that came to work every day. And that's not why we do this. But you all in Dane County are incredibly blessed, really, with a team of folks that every single day come to work to take care of you and serve you and answer your calls for help. And I feel blessed to be just a little part of that system. So thank you, and always happy to participate.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And everyone, Paul has a great FAQ on their website too. If there's something that you haven't gotten, he has a really extensive FAQ for frequently asked questions.